Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Welcome Sam.
Thank you for having me. This has been a kind of a long time coming doing
It
this.
is it is yeah, I'd like to combine, I'd like to bring people around the table, and it's not very easy because lots of people that live in Europe and America, they work during the week, so but I'm trying my best, and I've been asking you to be as a guest on my stream for for a quite a long time, and but there is absolutely no rush. I'm really glad you accepted my invitation. Um,
Yeah.
hey,
Um, hey, Trevor.
hey,
Um, yeah. There was a lot going on. I think you had originally asked me maybe a month ago to go over something entirely different.
yep,
And yeah, I mean, I've just been crazy busy during the week. I've started a new job, which is kind of taking some
okay,
time to get used to. My
yeah,
girlfriend lives a couple hours away, so just trying to plan time with her
yeah,
to make that work has really taken up a little bit of my after work time, which is all good. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm glad tonight we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, usually I do on Saturday, because Saturday I can start a little bit earlier because of all the European people. They follow my channel, like the German, the UK, because of the now it's 5 hours difference, because they switch to the winter time. But
Right,
usually it's 6 hours. So I like to have the East Coast available, and the people from Europe. So and
right.
usually it works a little bit better on the weekend. Hi Richard.
Hey,
Uh,
Richard.
yeah, but so it's completely fine. So yeah, really glad to have not only a record collector, a musician on the stream. And yeah, originally I remember I was asking a German guy. He speaks English a little bit, and I wanted to have the two of you around the same table, because this is what I do. I like to invite people from different backgrounds, from different countries, and finding sort of common ground. It's always interesting. This is what a community is all about. And with all this StreamYard, I like not being myself talking for 1 hour. I like to invite my VC friend, as I like to call them, and
Yeah,
so we can discuss about our path, our journeys through music, latest acquisition, and crush, about all sort of things. So this is what I like to do. So
yeah, it's good, and it's always. I mean, I know. I don't think. I know. I've been on a couple of streams with you as you've just kind of popped in and this and that, but I've never been on your channel. And yeah, actually, I haven't done a stream in a good bit because I was doing the Wednesday night with Rob, but like I said, life kind of took over, and me and the other guys all had things that came up that we all had to kind of prioritize. So it's
yeah,
good to be on. Hey, Elliot.
yeah, I can fully grasp. When I moved from France to Canada, the first year I simply didn't have a single minute for myself. So I started exactly the channel 1 year after. At the time, I had more like flexibilities, because I found an apartment. I had enough like furnitures and everything. I had to settle down. So yeah. Now you change the job, and you said you're in the weekend. You're not at home, so I can fully understand. And we are, as I say, young people, and we all love the entire community. Jack, Steve, and everything. But it's funny. The two of us are pretty young compared to the vast majority of the which is absolutely fine. So I
Right.
just wanted to talk about that fact, that in Europe is a little bit different. In Europe, lots of people, they are in their 30s, maybe early 40s. It's a little bit different in France, but in North America, it's not that case. It's not like 18 young Euro people start a VC channel. It's a little bit different, and so we can discuss about that in the in the course of these 2 hours or whatever it will bring. So, how about your latest acquisition? Where did you buy? Did you buy lately? Can you share
Yeah,
us? Yeah,
it's been it's I mean it's that time of the year. You're either the companies are either holding back a little bit because they know Christmas is coming. They want the Christmas market for records in terms of pre-orders and things like that. And those that know my channel know that the record store near me is very small. I've only I only have one in my area, and then everything else is at least an hour away. And not because we can't handle a second record store, it's just that it hasn't happened. I mean, we've, in my part of Virginia, we've really built up like an arts community with
Mhm.
lots of, we have lots of those small venues, 200-300 seat venues, old, warehouses that have been converted into places like little coffee shop, bar, clubs, down the main city kind of drag. And then we also have, auditoriums and, like a, Coliseum type,
Yep.
5,000 seater type places around here. I mean, we get the big names here. I mean, we don't get, the massive stadium, we don't get like the Paul McCartneys here, but, we get, I've seen Bob Dylan in my town 4 times,
Yeah.
just 10 minutes down the road. I've seen Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys here. I've seen Gordon Lightfoot, John Prines. Like I've seen all these people in town. And, just wish that we had more record stores to kind of accommodate the fact that we're a music community. All that to say is most of my music acquisitions are, through Amazon, through, artists' stores.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just recently, about 3 weeks ago, I was in Atlanta in Georgia. I went to go see Jeff Lynne and ELO. And my friends and I went and hit about 4 or 5 different record stores. I didn't even pull those records. I've got other records here. The latest, I'll just start with like the latest thing that I got is not a record, but something
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. CD, LP, whatever, music, no problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
this was something that I wanted when it was announced. It was announced, I guess, back in July or so for pre-order, and it sold out fast, like the first wave of it, and it's been kind of hard to find. And it's this set right here. Sorry about the lighting. It's Bob Dylan and the band, the 1974 live recordings. And it's 27 CDs. So you can see these thin little CD slips here.
Yep.
And I just got it a couple of days ago. So I know Mazzy did a video about Bob Dylan and this set. And you can see, again, there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles to it. I mean, it's really just the CDs. And it did come with a little, just like a standard kind of booklet, but, nothing, no massive, box set kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what I'm kind of taking Mazzy's recommendation in that I don't want to overdo listening to this. So essentially, for those that don't know what it is, again, some people might call it, like a copyright dump, right? It's been 50 years. It's 1974. They've got to get this stuff out here. Otherwise it's going public domain. So Bob Dylan and the band, obviously, Canadian American group that backed Bob Dylan in 1966 and 74. They went on a show. This was their first tour since 1966 together. So it had been 8 years. And the band backed Bob. The band played their songs. At that point, they were solidified. I mean, they had hits. And so it was a huge tour. Like Bob would lead the stage. The band would do 4 or 5 songs. Bob would come back, do his acoustic thing. They
Okay.
would
Wow.
play
Yeah.
together. And there was a live album. One of my favorite live albums called Before the Flood, which incorporates Bob Dylan, the Bob Dylan tunes and the band songs. Like you have, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. You have the band doing, King Harvest and, stuff, their stuff, The Weight. And what this said is they've removed the band music. So like essentially the tracks that are band affiliated, and it's just the Bob Dylan stuff. So it's every
Okay.
show from that tour that was recorded, very similar to a set that came out in 2016 involving his 1966 Electric Tour. Essentially everything that they have available, they put it in a box set. So, again, a lot of the stuff is the same. It's very repetitive. I would only recommend it if you're a diehard Bob Dylan fan. And, most of the times these sets drop in price after, a month or so. But the thing is that first wave of them sold out and it was hard to, you couldn't find them. They were already getting, sold higher priced on, the secondary markets and that kind of thing. And then Amazon got a new wave in, and I was able to snag a set. So it's been a very slow process. Again, I just got the set on Monday evening, and so I'm only four CDs in, and again, they're full concerts. I mean, they're like 75-minute albums, because they've taken out the band stuff, which would have made it a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
And so you've really got to take it in, but you also don't want to overdo it. So anyway, I'm very excited that I was able to grab it. Again, the sets do vary, so you do get some different tracks. But again, I only recommend it if you're a diehard. If you're interested in that tour, go ahead and buy the Before the Flood record, which was the original record,
Yeah.
which has the band stuff. It's very high energy stuff. It's really, really good.
Do you have the original record on CD or
I
no?
have it on CD. It's over
Yeah.
here, on my CD stack. But the cover of it is, everybody, the audience holding, cigarette lighters, and some people argue that Bob Dylan was one of the first, if not the first, artist to have lighters at concerts that people were waving.
Okay.
And so like the cover is this really cool orange perimeter on the record, the border, and then you just see like all these lights of cigarette lighters, and that's the record. It's a 2-record set. Really, really, really good. If you like the band, if you like kind of a raw kind of sounding Bob Dylan, it's really, really good stuff. So that's the latest thing that I have that I'm just super, super, super excited about to have it as a Dylan fan.
Yeah, it's I'm not really a diehard fan of Dylan. I have several. I used to have everything greatest hit on CD, but back then, I'm on the lookout for some of the originals. Like I already have the Blonde on Blonde. My copy is a '68 pressing. Music from the Big Pink it's been on my want list forever.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to find at a decent price. But yeah, I guess. What is your favorite period? Because this Newport Festival '65. The story. It started to electrify the folk. What is your feeling about that? What is your favorite era? I mean, if there is a certain period of time that you would prefer, say, hey, this is my
Man,
window.
that's almost impossible to say because Bob
Yeah.
Dylan has been, so many different people in his life. I mean, I think it was Amazon was doing one of their Prime sales, and they were, essentially you could get 3 records for the price of 2. And I have all but 1 record for Dylan on CD, and that's the Basement tapes. And the reason I don't have the Basement tapes is because I own the huge box set that came out like in 2014 or so with everything from the Basement tapes. Anthony, what's going on?
Fine to me.
So with that, I bought the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, which was obviously really his true debut. I mean, he had put out a record before that, which was mostly covers, but the Freewheelin' was like, Blowing in the Wind.
Yeah.
Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, all that stuff. Didn't have it on vinyl. I bought that. Also bought Highway 61 Revisited, which has like a Rolling Stone on it, and Desolation Row. So, I get in these moods where like I want to hear, protest, angry, kind of young Bob Dylan talking about, civil rights and the politics at the time, the Vietnam War. I get in that mood where I want to hear that. I get in the mood where I want to hear, Blood on the Tracks is my favorite Bob Dylan records. Like I love his vocals during that time. Again, that 74 set, that's kind of the vocals that he's going across there. I like his gospel records. I like the three gospel records that he put out. I think, and the live stuff during that time was just incredible. I mean, he had, Mick Taylor from the Rolling Stones was playing with him at that time. Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits was playing with him at that time. And Jim Keltner, who was, a huge session player. He played with the Traveling Wilburys. He played with George Harrison, with Clapton, everything. And actually he's currently touring with Bob now as the drummer. And, I get in these moods. I even sometimes get in the mood for, cheesy 80s Bob Dylan, and those overproduced, 80s records. So, it's hard because like, I love everything that he does. Even the albums that people kind of throw away as, garbage. I like everything about, at least one thing about every record that he's ever put out, even the cover albums he's put out. He's put out a bunch of cover records. I love those too. So it's very, very hard for me to say like this is the Dylan that I would take with me on a deserted island. Like here's 5 years. I don't know if I can do it. I really don't.
And as a writer, I mean, now he's been recognized as a writer. Do you follow also his career as a writer?
Yeah, so I've
Yeah.
read I read his autobiography, Chronicles, which is funny because he called it Volume One. And I think it came out in 2006 ish,
Yeah.
and there were all these rumors that he'd written two other volumes, and that they were expected to come out. Um, and he put out another book recently, a couple years ago, called Philosophy of Modern Song, which I haven't read it yet. I've read a couple of segments from it, and that's supposed to be like a very kind of stream of consciousness kind of writing, where he's just talking about the music that he grew up with, but also music that inspired him. I mean, he talks about everything from rockabilly to hip hop to heavy metal. I mean, he talks about like Metallica in
Oh,
this record,
okay.
just like anything that he recognizes as good music. I mean, I think he might talk about, like, Jay-Z in the book, and he talks about people that he just respects as artists. Now, I don't know that Bob Dylan is sitting at home, pumping iron to, Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg, but he might be. He's done some weird things that nobody's expected.
Yeah, it's the same with Miles Davis, I guess. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know at a certain period of time in the 70s, he did certain things with certain artists we could never have imagined maybe 20 years earlier. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, he
yeah,
was doing
yeah,
stuff with Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that, were just, yeah, unprecedented, where he was kind of, more of this acoustic jazz, and then, like on, In a Silent Way. And then he kind of shifted to, On the Corner and Bitches Brew and all that stuff, where you're like, this is not the
yeah,
same guy that did Kind of Blue, but at the same time, he never wanted to get stuck. I mean, even at the end for Miles Davis in the 80s, he was playing just the stuff that he was putting out in the 80s. Like, he wasn't going back and playing, So What, live. Like, that was done. I mean, he was playing his stuff of the time.
yeah. This is what we expect from a true artist. Uh,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah. I recently watched a documentary. I think it was first aired on the British television called the Folk Britannia.
Okay.
And now you can find on YouTube. You simply Folk Britannia Part One, and it's very interesting. The connection between the yeah, Great Britain, the America, those two young lads, Donovan and
Mm-hmm.
Bob Dylan, starting at the same time with the same hats,
Mm-hmm.
covering Lead Belly and Woolly Guthrie, or Arlo
Mm-hmm.
Guthrie song. It's
Yeah.
simply yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, talking about my latest acquisition. Yeah, I'm flying to Den Bosch, so that big fair next week in the Netherlands.
Oh.
So I tried to save some money, but it failed last month. Yeah,
Yeah.
it failed. Yeah, we had a small record show here in Montreal, and I found a copy of this is the very last record I bought. I don't know if you're familiar with Ultravox. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they are 80s when they were like this new wave new wave pop band from the 80s. This is the very first one they made, late 77. This is pretty much post punk. uh John Fox was the
Okay.
leader at the time, co-founder. So it's way different from what they will be doing later with Vienna, with Lament, 84, 82, all that kind of stuff. This is like yeah, really post punk, so to say, 77.
Okay.
And I'm giving a shout out for Alex Beer and Vinyl. This is we both have Polish roots, he and
Mm.
myself. So this is a Polish band, a Polish prog band from the 70s. Very experimental in a way, called SBB. This is their first album, 75. Yeah,
Mm.
Polish pressing. I'm more into progressive music. I try to a little bit enlarge the scope, and looking for something like not the big names. So always
Yeah.
interesting to find something a bit different. So, yeah.
Um, one of the things that I just got.
Hi,
This
Sean.
Let me see.
Yeah, this is Sean. Vinyl Dreamscape.
Oh, hey,
Very
Sean. Nice to meet you.
Sean, Richard, Marsha P is
Hey,
in the house.
Marshall. It's
Hey, Marsha.
been a long time.
Yeah.
That's definitely a Richard S. kind of music there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, yeah. He likes shoegaze and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how big they were Ultravox in the U.S. Cannot
Uh,
figure it out.
yeah, I don't know. They would be somebody that I'm sure that Brian would know
Yeah,
for sure. And then Jeff Witcher also loves 80s. He loves new wave. He loves all
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
I know them because I was born in '86. Okay, so got interested in music maybe at the age of 12, and I remember on every single '80s new wave compilation, you had like always a Ultravox, Depeche Mode, OMD song. So it was like the classics. So they were like the big band from the '80s, and yeah, from Great Britain. And I can find some Canadian pressing over here in record stores. So I guess they had some certain success in North America.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know I've seen their. I mean, I've seen their name. I've heard them talked about, but I've never dabbled. I mean, the closest that I get to anything like that. Um, I mean, I really like Tears for Fears a lot. I know that
yeah,
they have a I think either came out Friday or it's coming out this Friday, a new live record because they put out that album, The Tipping Point, like back in 2022, 2021, which was like a reunion for the two guys, and that was
yeah,
a really good record. That was on the top of a lot of people's top 10 favorite records of that year. It was one of mine. I mean, it was really good, and so the live album that's coming out focuses on that tour, but then they also recorded like 4 new studio tracks for the record. So like disc, the second disc, side D is going to be, 4 new studio tracks for
yeah.
the Tears for Fears fans out there.
Overall, what's your take on those '80s bands? But '80s bands in every it goes in every direction.
Yeah.
Would say yeah, new wave, very early '80s new wave, post punk. What is your take? Is it something you like, or it's not something you're okay? I know, but
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely one of those things. I mean, I think like a lot of people, across the world, uh, I was getting into music in my early teens. So, 13, 14, 15 is when I was actually paying attention to music and not just, listening to, the top 40 on the radio. And so with that, I was listening to classic rock radio. And I know a lot of people, you were talking about like kind of like the age difference in the YouTube community here. A lot of the older people that we have on here, they don't get sick of like the big hits that are on the radio, whether it's your Hotel Californias, your Stairway to Heavens, whatever,
yeah,
because they came out when they were when they were young, and like they heard those songs for the first time and didn't need to listen to classic rock radio. Whereas I'm sure with whatever radio you were listening to growing up, what I was listening to with the classic rock stations, I was getting the same 100 songs on repeat. And
yeah,
so with that, a lot of that 80s stuff was played, and I was kind of, I loved it at the time, and I had it downloaded on my MP3 player growing up, which was kind of my predominant source of music. I'd take it to school and listen to it, before and after, my parents would come pick me up from school. But I mean, I was listening to, Billy Idol, and I was listening to, early Guns N' Roses stuff, and
yep,
even, I mean, I hate to admit, but even like some Bon Jovi and like the hair metal stuff, some Poison, like I would like that's the stuff that my friends were also listening to, and I was getting into it too. I mean, I knew the lyrics to Pour Some Sugar on Me. I knew Def Leppard, and the stuff that you hear on the radio now, where you kind of are like ugh, like let me turn
yeah,
the channel. So that was like my introduction to like 80s rock. And again, like there's other groups kind of slipped in there, whether it was Tears for Fears or
yep,
the Cure for like a couple of tracks, whenever the Cure would make an appearance on the radio. Like I said, Billy Idol, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC in the 80s. So all that stuff is what I was soaking in because of classic rock radio and what my friends were listening to. When I was in the car with my friends, we'd plug in their MP3 player, and that's what we would listen to. So that's kind of my take on it. Now I'm interested for you because you said you were born in '86, so that means you're 8 years ahead of me. I was born in '94. What is your take on it, having been somebody that was around, in like the mid '90s to actually remember that, and the '80s music was not that old. Like was that something that you latched on too early?
Probably discover, yeah, as I say, music. I was really like really enjoying Queen. I remember '95 when it came out, Made in Heaven.
Yeah,
So Freddie Mercury passed away in '91, so '95 came out this Post Made in Heaven. And yeah, my parents they still had some cassettes, some vinyl at home or records from the '80s. So and there were this special program during the summer with a special '80s. It was only 10 years after, and yeah, my parents they were crazy about that. So yeah, we listened to. I was very close. Grew up very close with the border with Germany. So I grew up listening to lots of German radio stations, and they had their special folk or special '80s moment. So yeah, I grew up with Depeche Mode, with U2, with The Cure,
yeah,
with all those bands. So and I really like the synth pop sound. I could say there's certain songs I find it very very cheesy, but back then really like this typical early '80s yeah, synth pop new wave song, so sound. So yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that was another big one was U2. Yeah, they I was listening to a lot of U2.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, and it's a very interesting comment from Sean Coney Plank. That's the German guy, sound engineering. He lived like a hippie, like always in the middle of the forest in Germany. But he helped Eurythmics and Vienna. Vienna, that's their first album from Ultravox. When Meteor came, yeah, John Fox gave up and Meteor joined the band, and he is the one who shaped the sound. Conny Plank in his studio in Dusseldorf in Germany. So yeah, he played a very big part, and he also helped Eurythmics, yeah, for first album.
Mhm.
So a very very important person, and yeah, Vienna dancing with tears in my eyes. That's the those were really hits back then. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Any other new acquisitions do you want to show?
Yeah, I've got a couple. This one just came in. I don't know how much of an interest it will be to people, but this is one of my favorite groups. Again, kind of they were one of those big groups in the 2010s. To kind of do like the folk revival scene with like um, the Mumford and Sons and of Monsters and Men, um, groups like that. So this is the Lumineers.
Yep.
Their big hit was Ho Hey, I think in like 2011 or so. And this is a recent live record. It's a 3 record set. They sold out Wrigley Field in Chicago. It says September 3rd, 22. So it was 2 years ago. But the vinyl on this is just really, really nice.
Yep.
And
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
like I said, it's 3 discs. I just finished. I listened to 2 records yesterday. While I was working, I work at home, work from home, and yeah, I mean, I'm not going to open it up because it's too big, but it's a trifold of Wrigley Field. I'll go ahead, I guess, and then like I said, 3 record set. It's off of Dual Tone Music, Dual Tone Records,
Yep.
who are they're a really solid record company. If you've ever heard of Magnolia Record Club.
No, I'm not familiar.
I don't know if they ship to Canada, but they're through Dual Tone, and it's essentially you can they sell individual records, but it's also they do a record of the month. A lot of it is kind of indie kind of stuff. They have a few non-indie
Yeah.
artists. Standard musicians will show up, and you pay $30 a month, and you get your free record every month.
Okay, it's like the Tone Poet things. Like you subscribe to a certain jazz things, and then every month you get like the selected record
Right,
of the month.
the curated, it's usually like
Yeah.
a special color variant just for, club members.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
I signed up for like a 3-month subscription because I really wanted a record that they were putting out and the particular variant that they had. And then I ended up, you can cancel it anytime you want, but the next 3 records were all ones that I wanted. So I ended up staying around for it. But like I said, they also have a regular store that you can purchase from, and that all the records are through dual tone. So usually when one has a sale, the other one's also having a sale.
Okay.
And then I know I just did a video on this.
Just a question: how did they evolve? Because I remember that song "Oh Hey" from the year 2011. My wife really loved it. And how
Yeah,
did they evolve? Because I don't really follow them. How can you say
yeah,
musically
um,
speaking?
yeah. I mean the two main guys. So Wesley Schultz is the main songwriter um, um, and vocalist, and then Jeremiah Freites, who is he's the drummer essentially when they play live, but he can play anything. And actually, he's put out in the last couple of years, he's put out two instrumental solo piano records, which are really good. Sunday morning coffee kind of records,
Yeah,
kind of that
ECM
soft.
is ECM ish or
Yeah, a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
But and then Wesley Schultz, the singer, he put out one of a COVID record essentially where he covered a bunch of tunes by artists that he liked. He covered Springsteen, he covered Tom Waits,
hmm
Sheryl Crow, Jim Croce. He did a bunch of different covers. But anyway, they've put out um, they've put out four studio records, the Lumineers. So their most recent one was called Bright Side, which came out in 2022. And that one is a very kind of it's very short. It's only like 28, 29 minutes, maybe. It's like 9 tracks. And one of the tracks is a reprise of the title track. I think they've lived a lot of life. I know Wesley, the writer and singer, he brings in a lot of his family into his writing. They put out a record. The record before that was called Three. It was their third record, kind of a concept record. It was a big record talking about family addiction and divorce and just alcohol and like all this stuff that kind of tore some of Wesley's family members apart. That's kind of a darker record. It's probably my least favorite, but not because it's bad, just because it's not one that I want to listen to much. I mean, it has a song or two that kind of have that, stomp clap kind of sound that, was big in 2010, 2011.
okay,
So, like they kind of keep that with like a song or two, but I mean, their lyrics are they're very well crafted. I think that they are really good writers. I mean, both of them are great musicians. The two guys, and they have some great musicians with them that play on stage. So I'm really a big fan of their catalog. Like I said, they have 4 records. This is their first official live record, and I mean they've appeared on a couple of soundtracks and one-off
yeah,
tribute projects. But I really like the Lumineers. I'm kind of a completist with them for everything.
okay, yeah,
Um, but I've never seen them live. But I mean, the fact that they're filling out Wrigley Field kind of is a testament to when I have an uncle and a couple of my cousins saw the Lumineers it was essentially a little auditorium here that holds about maybe 3,000 people max. I saw a show there for the first time. My parents have seen shows there, but my uncle, my family members saw the Lumineers open for Old Crow Medicine Show, who are kind of a bluegrassy kind of string band, and that was just after the first record. So they were just essentially playing the first record all the way through the ho hey stuff,
yeah,
and the fact that they're now able to sell out Wrigley Field in Chicago and play, these massive venues is, says a lot for a band that, you think like, oh, they're just a group that sang ho hey, but they have quite a following still. Um,
okay, yeah. Yeah, well, I have to maybe go a little bit deeper because, as I said, I don't follow them. But now you you piqued my curiosity. Certainly, yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
would my favorite of the 4 records is Cleopatra, which is their second.
Okay.
Cleopatra was a semi-radio song, and so was the song Ophelia. Not the song by the band; it's a different song that they wrote. And what's cool about the Lumineers is they're also visual artists. So a lot of times they'll take many of their songs and make music videos that all incorporate into one another. So with that album 3 that I mentioned earlier, they essentially they made a video for every song on the record, and it ended up being, this like 38, 39 minute mini movie that they actually premiered at a film festival.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched the show Ozark that was on Netflix.
Nope.
There's a big show, but one of the main kids that's on that show, he stars in the video. And again, that record 3 is kind of supposed to be about, various generations of people going through these struggles. So it starts with, the grandfather, and then his daughter, and then her son. And so like that's the whole, it's about, how like it sticks in the family a lot of the times. It's pretty powerful stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Lumineers, they care about their craft, and they don't really settle for mediocrity, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So all that to say, yeah, I'm happy to have a new Lumineers product, because it's been almost 2 years since their last record came out. So
Yeah. Interesting question. How we feel?
what do you think about that? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, we discuss. We host a show every Sunday morning with with these guys, Stunt Rock Confusion, Stunty. He has a very big knowledge about. He actually runs a plant in Sweden, so
Okay.
he plays vinyl records, and we discuss about from A to Z, all the steps, all the process, and yeah, it's now in 2024 when an artist records new music. Um, it don't have in mind, hey, this will be pressed on vinyl records,
Mm-hmm.
because 90% or 95 or 96, I don't know exactly, of the people they will discover and enjoy the songs will be on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. And some of them will buy the CD, some of them will have the subscribe to have the flag of the WAV file. But vinyl is not the number one format. So and for each format, it takes a master. So it has to be mastered for vinyl. It has to be mastered for radio station. Radio station, where here they pay two license. They pay one license to be able to play, and they pay another license to be able to remix it, to shorten it, or so. And compromise. It's really hard. It's really hard to say. Back in the days, you had to find a record deal. You had to talk to a real person. You had to secure the deal. You have to be good enough. With the Beatles, it all started because one guy was asking Brian Epstein, "Hey, do you have a copy of these records on the store?"
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, "No, I don't have a copy." So he went to find a band. It all started like that. Nowadays, it couldn't work like that because you have to. It's all about algorithm. It's all about Spotify. It has to be catchy in the 31st seconds. So the old, we could talk about that 6 hours or I don't know. Compromise, compromise because of the evolution of how we consume music. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, obviously, we're still in this, vinyl renaissance, whatever
Yeah, we
people
want
are
to call it. Yeah.
labeling it as, these days. Which probably started what, in like 2014, 2015 or so, where, all of a sudden artists were releasing everything dual, CDs and vinyl. And I'm not sure if they're asking because a lot of times the vinyl records are, digital cuts, digital sources. I mean, like, the whole MoFi thing, last year. But I don't think in terms of just, of streaming services, killing physical media. I don't see that being a thing. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they were mentioning that they only have a record player and they only have a record collection, you know, because of Taylor Swift. And you know, say what you will about Taylor Swift or you know these modern artists that you know put out tons of you know variants. I mean, Taylor Swift is one of the many now who you know you have an album cover and it's slightly is different on 6 different formats and you know 6 different color variants. You know, everybody does it now. Um, and because of that, the vinyl, you know, like you just mentioned, the vinyl product is higher than CDs for the first time in the last 2 years than you know since the '80s,
Yeah.
and that says a lot. And I think that now that I think that people are really now getting smarter for you know what kind of record they want to purchase, you know, and what it's going to sound like. I mean, now you have you know these acoustic sounds, kind of recordings. You have you know the tone poets, the MoFis, you know, whatever you're looking for. People you know that know a little bit about records. I mean, I do not at all claim to be an expert because I'm not on records or record collecting. I just started this you know stupid hobby you know 2 years ago with you know with
Yeah.
COVID and you know it's probably a little bit after COVID. You know, a lot of people. I mean, you mentioned Alex earlier from Beer and Vinyl. Alex didn't start till COVID um,
Yeah.
with his collection, and you know I know that there's you know for example you have you know your Barnes and or okay, for example, Target just I think released like a version of "A Love Supreme" by John Coltrane sometime
Yeah.
last year, and at the same time, Acoustic Sounds was also releasing an audiophile version of "A Love Supreme," and then I think even like 6 7 months later, like Barnes and Noble had like their cut of "A Love Supreme." Now then you start getting into the whole thing, you know what plate did they use? You know where do they press these things? Blah blah blah. You know some of these things, you know they use the same plates as you know the acoustic sounds people. It's the same plate. It's just in a different city, and they're able to do it on a you know a budget. So it's hard you know when you're first starting you know a collection to get overwhelmed. I've talked to a bunch of people that say you know how do I know what to get? Why don't I just go to you know the thrift store and buy you know 5 really trash you know Beatles records that are at the thrift store?
It's I'm not an audiophile and I'm not a completist. If I have enough money, to buy an OG, to be able to get a hold of the best sounding format, I will. Classical music, it's mainly possible. I remember back in days when I was still living in France, I could have some Deutsche Grammophon classical music German pressing for free, new the best possible, so I wouldn't pay $20, and it doesn't cost $20 when they do a reissue of UHQR whatever of classical music, because I have access to the original press. Jazz music is a little bit different. I wouldn't spend 2 grand or 3 grand for an OG Miles Davis. So in that case, the reissue is fair. It's completely fair. But these UHQR things, I don't know. I think it's lots of marketing behind that, because people expect to find the records when they were young, when they were like, well, we need the classic rock, we need the jazz, we need in the best possible format. But if it has been recorded 60 years ago on tapes, we know that tapes, it lost the information. Even if it has stored like in the right way with the right humidity, the right temperature, we know that. So yeah, fair enough. They can reissue them, but it's probably bullshit when they try to do some marketing. It's the best version 50 years ago. Yeah, that's my feeling. So
The way we record, okay.
Yeah, because now lots of people they record at home, so they have their own on studio.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's we were kind of dealt the cards that we're given with the technology that's out there. I mean, the artists are gonna, if it's an easier process to use, an app to record their records and it sounds good, they're gonna do it. And the whole idea of analog is kind of antiquated, unfortunately. Um, so
And to say something is good and something is better, we have to compare. Lots of people don't even compare. And there is also this bit of nostalgia. I'm just talking about the Beatles. I grew up with the Beatles with a CD in the 90s. So this was the first time I got to hear the Beatles was on the CD I bought in France in 1996.
okay.
And after that, listened to online streaming, YouTube, and when I got on vinyl, I got a chance to travel to the UK to find those original. And yeah, it changed the deal. I say, okay, now that's the best version. But I had no problems enjoying those records when I was 14 years old on the CD. So it's all about your mind, and I this is what I can say, what I can say.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I have I was listening earlier today to a Monkeys record, and I'm going to use the Monkeys as an example because the Monkeys didn't put out audiophile music. I mean, they were those records were put out in vast quantities because they were meant for teenagers
Yep.
um, that were eating these things up, and they were party records. They were the records that kids would listen to when they got together at a house party, and the girls would circle which monkey they liked the best on the cover, like that kind of stuff. And those kids were not treating these records with kid gloves and doing rice paper inner sleeves for listening to these monkeys records that now I mean, like I'll say, like, all of my records are in these plastic sleeves, and some of these things that are 50, 60 years old. I'm sure that the kid that used to own these records would probably laugh at me thinking that, I'm treating these things so delicately now. And they used to just be, sitting on top of their, stereo with, TV guides stacked on top of the papers, I mean, on top of the records.
Yep. Exactly. Totally agree. Yeah. Some French guy from the French vinyl community. Hi, salut Claude. Hi.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, everybody thought that, not to get in the MoFi thing, 'cause, like, I'm not a MoFi guy, but everybody that had MoFi, every single person thought that it was the way that they had advertised it. And then when it was found out, a lot of those same people stopped buying it. And it's like, you still enjoy the product. You still, in your mind, you still think that it's the premier product. What did you stop buying it just because now they, admitted that there's a digital process in the mastering? So it's a lot of, hobnobbery and, kind of a lot of ego is involved in the vinyl world,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
lots of ego. You're definitely right. And when you say when you're 14 years old, when you don't even care, when you have a stupid systems, you enjoy the music, and that's the main thing. You don't think, do I have the best copy? Do I have the audio file? Do I have the biggest syringe ever? No, you simply enjoy, and this is how it should be. Yeah.
It is, but again, like the funny thing is, like, we're still gonna go out and buy, like the newest pressing of our favorite record. We're like, oh, we're spending, $50, $60 for this record. It's your favorite of all time. I've got to get it. And when you kind of do the A/B test with that record versus your old pressing, at the end of the day, is it a 30, 40, $50 difference between the two?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's about the money. It's simply about the money. When someone asks, "Hey, do I buy an OG or a press?" I say it's about the money. If I can afford an original copy because they sold it too so much, because the label is local and I can find pretty much everywhere, like the Eagles, for instance, over here on some Canadian bands, then yeah, I will go for an OG. But if this band's like sold, I don't know, they pressed 400 copies in the UK and it's most sought after, then the reissue is fine. But don't try to explain to me that the reissue will be better. Will be yeah, will be better than the OG because we have the best um, master engineer.
Well, that's the thing, and to bring up kind of to combine two worlds here with a recent thing. I just posted a video. Alex again was stayed with me for a couple nights last beginning of last week, and he had just his record store was getting rid of like 20 boxes of essentially filler records, and they put up online. They said, if you want the records, they're $10 a box, whatever, come and get them. Sight unseen essentially. And Alex went and bought all of them, as he does. He ended up with like 1,800 records, and so he's going through and getting rid of what he doesn't want. Blah blah blah. But all I have to say is one of the records he brought me when he came to stay was one that I had asked for, and it's Nat King Cole. Now, again, Nat King Cole, crooner. Everybody knows Nat King Cole. From the Christmas song, lots of Christmas hits is unfortunately what people know him for now. Again, he's a great musician, played piano beautifully. He was a great jazz piano player with the Nat King Cole trio. This is one of his biggest hits, "Lazy Hazy Crazy Days of Summer." But what I'm gonna say is that I think this is a reissue. It's got to be a reissue based on the it's the Rainbow Capital Swirl.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm guessing maybe the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. I don't know, but all I did was really brush this record off, and it plays really, really well. And I'm thinking, this was a filler record that with this record store said, we can't sell this thing. It's got to go. And, here I am listening to it, 50, 60, 70 years after it was pressed. And, I'm thinking like, it sounds really good. And like, the thing is, and this is what I've talked about with a couple of my friends, Alex included. And I don't know if you follow, Rhino Records a whole lot,
No, not that much.
They have kind of done the kind of essentially their audiophile collection. Every month or so they announce 2 records essentially. And what has become frustrating about these records, and I have a couple of them. They did American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. They did his band The Street Choir by Van Morrison. I have both of those. They did I think it was a Coltrane record. I think it was My Favorite Things by Coltrane, maybe. But they've had a bunch. But they just recently have started, announcing the latest in their series. And last month, a couple that they announced were Graham Parsons with his album. It wasn't Grievous Angel. I can't remember if it was what is his most famous record. I can't remember what it's called right now. And then an Emmylou Harris record. And now, obviously Emmylou Harris and Graham Parsons, I love them both. But you can go to any record store, and I'm assuming in Canada as well, definitely here in the States, you can find a Graham Parsons record or a reissue, or an Emmylou Harris original or a reissue for under $10. And you can find one very clean. And Rhino High Fidelity, that's what they're calling the Rhino High Fidelity series. These records, after shipping, unless you have a discount code, you're looking at $46. And I know it's different in Canada with y'all's shipping rates. $46 is, but I'm thinking, these are $10 or less records that they are, repressing and are pawning them off for $46. Again, they're beautifully done. They're all gatefold. They all come with like an OB strip. all of the bells and whistles, a really nice booklet for each of them with new liner notes, all that stuff. But
Yep.
they're $10 records, you know.
Yeah. So, what does it bring to the table? What does it bring? If this record is really rare, sought after, you won't find a copy unless you pay 3 grand on eBay.
Right.
Then yeah, I agree. I think reissue. A Karma did several reissues. The Italian label in the
Okay.
early 2000s, and they had access to a wonderful catalog of obscure British brands, heavy blues, psych. So it was finally an opportunity to get a hold of a copy of those great stuff you could never find unless you pay lots of money for. So in that case, totally agree. But they were cheap. They were not cheap. They were affordable. Let's put it like this.
Yeah.
During a fifth reissue of, as you say, of Eagles or the Elton John or something, you can find pretty much everywhere
Mm.
under $10 in a good conditions.
Right.
What's the point?
Right.
What does it bring to the table? That's the thing. Yeah.
That's the thing. And I
Yeah.
know, like, when I purchased American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. Again, it was 40 something dollars. That's not even a top 50 favorite album for me. But I talked a little bit about it with some friends, and they were kind of saying, you can find that's a record that's often, pretty much beat up. Yeah, there you go. That's the MoFi.
Yeah. And
Um,
I didn't buy because it's the MoFi. I bought because that's the very first record I bought upon my arrival here. First stop to a record store in Montreal, and was on my one list forever. And I simply find this record. I think I paid 38 Canadian dollars, which is probably 20 25. So I took it back home, but I was not like, hey, it's a MoFi. It's like I wanted this album. I found a copy and I bought and I grabbed it. That
yeah.
end of the game. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that, and that's what my friends are telling me. You can find an original of that in decent shape, and it's probably going to be $30 or $35. And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
why not buy it minty fresh, brand new, throw an extra $5 on it and get the Rhino release. And so I thought, I like that record enough. I mean, it's got some great tracks on it, and that's my favorite Grateful Dead record. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll buy it for $40, because otherwise I'll still want the record, and then I might as well, but I'll have to go back and get a used version, because I'm not somebody that needs the original. Like, I don't need an original American Beauty. I don't need an original Blonde on Blonde. I just want the ones that sound good.
Yeah. Exactly the same. So if I can find the original, if it's not too hard, because I spent lots of time traveling in Europe or over here in Canada. So and we are very close to Vermont, so I do have access to certain copies. Then okay, I will try to get a hold of an OG. But if after 2 years, okay, it's impossible, it's so rare, then grab a reissue and the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, not King Cole.
Yeah, Richard has got it right. Got it right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now here's the question. We always talk about, the standard kind of VC questions, but I was talking to Jason Arsenault, over in British Columbia. He has
Yeah.
a channel. He hasn't done a video in a while.
Yeah. Great channel, by the way. Great.
Yeah, again, it's been
Yeah.
a long time, but I talk to Jason a lot. He's one of my really good friends. We were talking, what is that record that you would kind of, shell out, put out on a loan to purchase. I mean, he's a big fan of, like, 90s alternative. Like, Pearl Jam is his favorite band. So obviously, like, some original Pearl Jam records from the 90s would be high on his list. For me, I love Nick Drake, and those 3 albums that Nick Drake had. Again, singer songwriter from the 70s. He was on Island Records.
Island label. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. those OGs are incredibly sought after,
Yeah, I
and
know.
I have their imports. They're all from I think 2011. For the three records that he put out, but I've seen like a mid 70s repress on a wall before, and it was like $200. And in my mind, I'm thinking, like I would really like to have that, but first, I would probably only put that money toward it if it was an original. And I probably, in my mind, I'm like, the three that I have probably sound better than the original. So again, like that, it comes back to that whole, kind of moral dilemma of, do I shell out $200, $300 for this record that I've been looking for when I know I'm going to take it home and it's going to have, pops on it. And, it might have a ding on the corner because it's, 55, years old. It's that never ending dilemma that us record collectors have.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I agree. They were not that expensive. I remember 4 years ago you could find yeah, something like 20, even less. I remember in in
Yeah.
Europe. Yeah, so fair enough. Yeah, those John Coltrane or Don Cherry, or not Don Cherry, Sonny Rollins stuffs. Yeah, they were. It was a way to rediscover jazz, paying something paying a decent price, and the end of the game. Yeah,
Well, that's the thing is that, again, I know JC from the flip side. He's always talking about one of his go-to things that he always says is if you wait long enough, everything will get reissued. Like what you want, unless it's like some sort of like local band, you're gonna find a reissue somewhere.
yeah,
If you're willing to wait it out, and that was the whole thing. Like I had never heard of the Black Jazz label until guys like Alex and people like that were talking about the Black Jazz label, which was like it was around for like 5 or 6 years, and then it ended. Great stuff, but those originals are so expensive, and a company like Real Gone Music that I absolutely love. They always kind of put out these niche kind of they have some novelty stuff, but they also put out these like niche reissues that I really like a lot. And they bought the rights to the Black Jazz label, and they were having a sale. I mean, they're having a sale right now on CDs where you can get these Black Jazz records for like $5, and you get the OGs and they're $200, $300 because they were in such limited supply and only released once in the early 70s.
yeah,
So I'm again I'm not somebody that's thinking like, oh, I've got to get those early 70s Black Jazz titles. But at the same time, I know that the people are out there. Some of them might be watching, but I get that's just me and my budget.
yeah. But they are trying to make money because now vinyl, it's a resurgence of vinyl, so they try to make money. Prices are not what they used to be maybe three years ago. And I remember maybe 2005 or 2010 when the CD was very down. They did some really great box sets. Christmas time, you could buy some box set, 10 CDs with a booklet, and you didn't pay that much. And they don't do that anymore with vinyl. They do one UHQR, one vinyl with maybe another something with two bonus tracks, and you pay like really lots of money.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Yeah, that was like the whole like, and again, a phrase that I never knew till I joined YouTube was the sound wars kind of situation where those albums in the late '90s, early 2000s, the volume was ridiculous on them, like how loud they are. And I never thought about it until I started like actually re-listening to my albums from 2002 through 2006, 2007. That's interesting. See, I don't know because okay. So again, I'll go back to um, I'm a huge Monkees fan. People that know me know this. I have all but two Monkees records on vinyl. One of them I don't think is possible because it came out. It was their reunion album in the '90s. But what I'm doing is the Monkees had their original run in the '60s,
Yep.
and then Rhino Records bought the rights to the Monkees music, and then they reissued those records, remastered them in the '80s. So I'm trying to get the originals on the Cold Gems label, which was an affiliate of CBS, and then get the Rhino reissues because a lot of times those Rhino reissues there are slight differences to the music. But I just bought two different versions of the album Headquarters by the Monkees. It's their third album. It was the album that they put out where they played their own instruments on it. Rhino just reissued a new cut of it, which is fantastic. And I bought that, and then literally the next day I was in a record store and I saw an original mono of Headquarters, and it was $10. And so I put it on the turntable today for the first time, and it had a lot of clicks on it. There was one small skip on it. I might be able to get it out, but that's what I'm regretting. I'm like, it was only $10, but at the same time, I'm thinking, I've got this brand new remaster of it. It sounds so clean, and it's from Analog Tapes. Why do I need to get this original? Why did I put $10 toward this thing? Again, it was only $10. There are millions of them that you can still find at any record store in $10 bins or less. But I wanted it, and it looked clean enough for me to kind of to hold a place right now. Why do I have two copies of it? Because one of them sounds a whole lot better than the other one.
Yeah, it's the same with Revolver. I had a CD which I bought when I was 14 in 2000 in France. After I think when I got into vinyl, I found an original copy French press. Then I bought the box set that came out 2022. The new mix Giles Martin, and I paid too much money for that. And it's clean. It's well done. It's no question about that. And 1 month after, I took my trip to the UK and I found a very original copy, mono -2. And sorry, but the box, the new version is they put a lot of effort. They did a great work separating, deconstructing the cake, redoing the cake. No question about that. But if the original is in good condition, like VG Plus or Mint, it's a question of perception. It can vary very much depending you or myself, or do I prefer the digital sound or the analog?
So let me ask you this, kind of onto one of the topics that we were discussing off camera when we were setting up the stream. How much now? I mean, how long have you officially had a channel at this point?
A VC channel. I started the channel in October, so 2 years ago. But but the very first video I uploaded was in March.
March of this year. Okay.
No, March last year. So
okay.
So I've been active, for
a year and a half ish.
Year and a half. Yeah.
Okay. So how much then of your pre YouTube life, and with buying records, CDs, whatever, how have you noticed a shift in your buying habits since starting a channel, since meeting people, since watching these channels that, we just assume that everybody we watch is just an expert, and what they say is like, oh, well, if they say it sounds good, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. Like, have you noticed an influence from YouTube on your buying?
A very good question. I recently made a video about all the records I bought because VC friend talked, and I was like, "Oh, I need it." I never knew. I never know. Oh, thanks.
I know you mentioned John Prine, and I think in that video.
John Prine is because of. Oh, sorry, I just forget. I should have mentioned this because I bought it because of you. Yeah, I've got here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I had very little idea about this guy, and you mentioned it, and I was at this record store, PCV record store, not too far from Ontario, Toronto, from Rob, and yeah, I bought it. So yeah, to respond your question, I probably very shortly after, because I participated in numerous of live streams, and I got a talk behind the scene with some people like Stundy or Fred Big Star 1000. So yeah, it changed my perception, because I wanted to share my experience. You know, the French guy who moved to Canada, I would talk about what he knows, but I know very little. And then we get to talk with people. They press vinyl. They have a huge collection. They've been playing music. They've been collecting for 40 odd years, and you are like, oh, okay, a brand new world, you know.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, shortly after, 6 months after, yeah, I started to add on my one list stuff, records, copy bands, and it was like crazy, like every day discovering new stuffs. And now I think it's it's getting too fast, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's my thing too. I mean, before YouTube, I mean, again, when I started my channel, I was mostly buying CDs, just
yeah,
because again, I'm in a one bedroom apartment. It's they're literally compact, so like I can fit a lot more music in here. But then all of a sudden, I was gifted a really nice turntable by my family, and then all of a sudden, I started going after the vinyl records, and I kind of made like a semi resolution at the beginning of this year of, if I'm going to buy it on vinyl, I'm not going to also buy it on CD. I've
yeah.
broken that resolution many times, especially for artists that I love. I've already got every CD by this artist. Why on earth would I buy a vinyl record and not get the CD too to fill out the collection? Because that's just how our brains work in this weird community. Um, but yeah, I mean, YouTube, I mean, even just the fact of like following pages on social media,
Yeah.
I would never have followed them because of YouTube. I mean, like different record companies, and like I said, the Black Jazz label, Acoustic Sounds, I never would have known about that had it not been for YouTube.
And at the very beginning, I remember I was like following the people talking about the same thing that I do, like classic rock at the very beginning, prog rock. But at a certain point, I say, okay, and I need to challenge myself. I need to discover to follow other channels. They and it's like really bizarre, because at the very first video, you don't even know how to comment. You have no reference, no idea. But
Right.
it's yeah, it's fun. It's really challenging, because this is how you learn more. Got meeting or following channels of people. They know, like I always say, I knew maybe a tree branch, and people know about half of the forest, you know. When comparing to a tree. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's challenge. It's sometimes frustrating, because you follow some conversation. Okay, they talk about obscure avant-garde stuff. I have no idea, but this is how you you empowering yourself. You learn more. You evolve. You enhance your knowledge. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. How about you? Do you like a certain type of music? Because I do the same, and we have our soft spot, our education, no question about that, and it's nothing wrong. But
Hmm.
how about you? Do you follow people's channel they who talks about something way different that you are into?
Yeah. One guy that I follow, and you might know him. I mean, he's been around for a couple of years. He has a good amount of followers. His name is Mike over at HubTunes. Um,
No.
Hubtunes. He's out of Chicago. Really, really, really smart guy. He doesn't give himself the credit that he deserves, in terms of how much he knows. Jason, you're the one looking good. I don't even know what you look like. Um,
Hi,
no,
Jason.
Jason looks wonderful. We anyway.
I
Yeah,
mentioned I mentioned him in my vinyl tag. You know, the three channels you have to
to shout out.
he stopped doing videos from that point. So I'm hope.
Yeah, he said forget you, FEA. I'm quitting this stupid world. I've got to save my money. So
Probably,
Um,
yeah.
no, for those that don't, yeah, Jason, he's still alive. He still
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, he made
Um,
a video about 3 months ago. It wasn't like really active this year, but I know he posted once a video. I think July, or time flies. I don't cannot remember.
wow, yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
But Mike down in Chicago, he listens
yeah,
to some crazy. Like he loves jazz, and he also loves psychedelic music a lot. Um, so like he has mentioned a lot of you know psych bands, kind of like acid rock bands that I never ever would have listened to. Which is funny because his favorite group of all time is Wilco, which is kind of more in my wheelhouse. But I'm not a Wilco fan necessarily. Like I like their first album or two, and then after that they kind of lose me. But yeah, Mike listens to like some crazy, like um, Middle Eastern influenced jazz and stuff like that. Probably most of it I wouldn't like, but Mike also is in an area where he's able to go to a lot of concerts, and he goes to a lot of these small jazz clubs, and these concert does these concert reviews. And every time he does it, I'm thinking like, man, that would be so cool to go see a concert with Mike, because he knows where to go. He goes to a concert, it feels like twice a week, and he sees these great musicians that, I've never heard of. And Mike obviously has a vast, array of knowledge about. So he's one that I mentioned quite a bit. Other than that, I'll admit that, a lot of times if a video pops up about music that, I know nothing about by a channel that I am not following consistently, I probably won't watch it, just because, I don't have the time for it. Um, and I find myself more and more watching the videos of, like my friends in the vinyl community, like the ones that
yeah,
actually I have
yeah,
communication with. So like, if there are 10 videos posted and I only have time for 4 of them, I'm gonna watch the 4 by people that I am friends with. So whether it's
yeah, yeah,
whether it's Alex, whether it's you, whether my friend Glenn Kellaway, Rich Strickler, I'm gonna watch their videos first before the other, like, second, not secondary, but like the channels that I follow, just as a
mm.
as a fan of the channel, not even as a friend of the person.
Yeah. I've been struggling. Yeah, because now there are so many new channels, and since I do the French live stream, I have to follow the French, the German, the British. It's a lot, and sometimes with the work, with other private stuff you have to deal with, sometimes it's really hard because
Yeah.
you really have to dedicate yourself. So what I say, I don't watch every videos, but when I watch, I really watch, and I not only 10 seconds, and yeah, great selection. you know
Right. Yeah. I don't
yeah,
want to do that. Like, somebody has
yeah,
like a 20-minute vinyl finds video, and, they posted it 20 minutes ago, and I've just watched it, and it's only been posted for, 20 minutes, and it's a 30-minute video.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, I
just like,
know.
hey, nice stuff. Keep it up. That's just, it just feels dumb. I mean, I get it. I'm showing the support. I'm giving them a view, letting them know that I acknowledged it.
Yeah,
But not to get into your personal life or anything like that. But like for me, like I work at home. I don't know what your work schedule is. But like what I like to do is to separate, because again, I'm in such a small space here at home, with it being a 1-bedroom apartment. While I'm working at home, I have music on in the background, because my job is not strenuous. It's not a job that requires, you know, a ton of, deep focus, while I'm doing that. So like I'm playing records all day long, and then like during lunch or my breaks, I'll watch YouTube. And then during the evening, I'm either, busy with family or friends or traveling or whatever. So
yeah,
my
yeah.
YouTube viewing has really gone down. So I don't know when you decide, I'm going to listen to music at this point. I'm going to watch YouTube at this point.
Yeah, it's the same. I got to work from home sometimes, but I'm also on road because I'm a stupid sales guy. So I have to visit my client once in a while, to meet the targets. So yeah, during that time, I don't have time to watch videos, but it's pretty hard. Certain weeks, I do have a lot of time working from home. So yeah, I gotta watch lots of videos, and some other weeks it's not the case. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about right. Um, yeah, I mean, again, the with mono records, a lot of times those things can look like they've been through the ringer and they can still play pretty well, just of how they're because of how they're made.
We
But
should ask Richard S because he recently started his own channel after following us quite diligently.
yeah,
So and he watched a lot of streams from Rob, Alex, Steve.
yeah, yeah. And Richard was a peanut gallery guy for a couple of years before
Yeah,
he.
he was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can get behind that. It's got that that vinyl feel to it. And again, like I mentioned, I bought records and CDs this year that I've got them on both formats because I'm I do listen to CDs, and that's another thing again about the whole you know kind of like the downside of the VC is that people do judge like, oh, you only listen to CDs, or why don't you listen to all formats of vinyl? Like, you listen to records, that means you're not allowed to stream ever. At the end of the day, what people forget is it's about what we're listening to, and I think that really gets lost in this community because if you think about it, the people that are on YouTube are not the majority of record buyers. Again, you've still got young kids that are out there buying records to play on their Crosley turntables, like
Yeah.
suitcase turntables that you can buy for $50.
Yeah.
That they want to get the latest, Harry Styles or Taylor Swift record, and they're not going to play it on these $10,000 systems like some of the people have on YouTube, which
Yeah.
it's great if you have it, but at the end of the day, it's about the music, and again, you start losing track of all the videos that are out there if you're actually listening to the music, which is where is the balance? Where is that balance of music versus the actual talking about the music?
I think now we have a choice because it's 2024. We have the benefit of the hindsight. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we know about the pro and the cons of a cassette, of a streaming. So I would say it's depending what am I doing. If I am like driving my car to see my clients up north Quebec, then I have a chance MP3 or CD. So and I want to listen to music whenever I have sometimes, and I cannot bring my turntable in my car. When I'm at home, it's I have a choice, vinyl or streaming, because I have to discover new thing I would probably be buying after that. So but being too extremist, like you must do this, that's the better, it's never leads to something good.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be political tonight.
Tis the
Hey,
season.
yeah,
Mike,
yeah, Mike, MGK's Buffalo. Oops, sorry, MGK's Boston.
MGK Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, okay, I have a couple
No.
of French. So yeah, this is really the one. Yeah, you were mentioning, and I got to listen to it earlier on.
Yeah.
It's funny. I always wanted to buy the Angel from Montgomery has been covered by Bonnie Riot, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken.
Yep.
And I was after that record for years because for my wife.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's the question I have. We host a live stream with Stunty, and we have some DJ that sometimes participate in as a panelist. A DJ. They have a huge collection for the when they go in a club, like playing like DJ in a club, and
Hmm.
for their own consumption, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And what is your, how about you? I mean, you're a musician, you write songs, sometimes you play songs. What portion of material do you use for writing composition?
Yeah. I mean, again, my channel, a lot of it's based off of, the singer-songwriter genre, which again, 15, 16-year-old me, that probably wouldn't have been the case because I was
Mhm.
just getting into music. I was purely into, classic rock, Led Zeppelin and, like I was already getting into Tom Petty at that point, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and the Beatles, but like I wasn't really, and no, I wasn't really digging fully into, the John Prynes, the Tom Waits, the Bob Dylans, the way that I did really in college. But yeah, I mean, like a good portion of the artists that I listen to, are inspirations to me in terms of how I play guitar, how I write. You know, Probably the three biggest ones would be the Avett brothers. They really inspire my guitar picking. Bob Dylan, just simply because of who he is, and he's my favorite artist, and just the vast catalog that he's put out, and how many different styles, and that you don't need a traditional voice to get a point across. I mean, I'm not somebody that considers himself a singer by any means at all. I don't think I am at all. But to look at guys like Bob Dylan and Tom Waits, like, well, they can convey a message. Chris Christopherson, who we just lost last month,
Yep.
um, you know,
Who
guys like
started?
that.
Yeah, who started at a very later age. I think he dropped his first album at the age of 35.
That's probably about
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so the Avett brothers for guitar, Bob Dylan. Again, I don't write like Bob Dylan. I don't play like Bob Dylan, but like he is always there. And then John Prine for a lot of the lyrics that I write, and my guitar playing as well. So those three. I mean, obviously, I have a ton of their stuff on physical format in my collection, whether it's CD or vinyl, and I'm completist with all those artists. Um,
Yeah.
and those are the big inspirations for me, no question.
How about this guy?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I'm a huge Birds fan. I've got most of the Birds records. I have no other by Gene Clark, which I know was recommended to me originally by Larry Graves. Um, and I'll admit I have not listened to it in a while, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I really respect Gene Clark, and again, he's somebody that I know I need to. Yeah, that one right there. I have the like the expanded CD version with like the extra disc, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a masterpiece. I just got a hold of this copy. I found it last week or 2 weeks ago at the fair at the record show.
Oh wow,
First press, Asylum 74. Yeah,
wow.
this is truly his masterpiece. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's one that I need to listen to. Again, I have it. It's been a long time since I've listened to it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Gene Clark, basically. Yeah, and I think I had a comp on a cassette very long time ago, and they were this song from the Birds, and you know that this typical 12-string guitar from Roger McGuinn. It's something that it burn your mind when you listen to that.
Yeah,
And they could compete with the Beatles. I think I don't have all the details, but I think they could pretty much like even in the 60s. And yeah, he was a genius, very underrated. And yeah, I'm trying to build up my collection, and I could find all those amazing albums he made with as a solo when he left the Birds.
yeah.
You know the I have them all. Uh, the White Light, the Roadmaster, which has been only released in the Netherlands on vinyl back then, because
Okay.
this one has a massive success. It's pretty underrated. And A&M, and on this one, it has this Birds flair sometimes, because some songs were recorded with the Flying Burritos, and some
Yeah.
other songs were recorded with 5 original members from the Birds. So
Okay.
really, really interesting. And yes, a simple like whatever he did with the banjo player Duke Dillard as well.
Doug Dillard. I have the Dillard and Clark record on SACD. I love that album.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great record.
Oh, it is. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
They
yeah,
made
'cause
two. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I need that one too. I need that one too.
yeah.
I know. Yeah, Gene Clark was interesting with the Birds, because again, he's really only on those first two records fully. And then he like he had songs that he had written that showed up like on the next couple. He was uncredited as a harmonica player, so like technically the Five Birds played together at least once on like their on the two albums after he left. And then again, like in the 70s and 80s, he did the McGuinn, Dillard, and Clark trio with Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman. I have that record. And then I think McGuinn and Hillman did a record after that where essentially it was like McGuinn and Hillman with special guest Gene Clark because Clark was going through his own struggles.
Yep.
And I know our buddy. Again, I don't know if you follow him or not. JT from JT's Record Room. He's out in Reno, Nevada. He has a collection for the ages. But his best friend growing up was Gene Clark's son, Kai Clark.
Okay.
And they played in a band together in the 70s for a while. So JT, again, he grew up in Vegas. His dad would think was like a maitre d' at some of the hotels and casinos in Vegas. So he got to meet, Elvis and Sammy Davis Jr. and Sinatra and, all those guys, Barry Manilow. Like he was like shoulder to shoulder with those guys. And
Okay.
yeah, JT hung out with Kai and got great Gene Clark stories. So yeah, Gene Clark is one of those like underappreciated kind of mysteries in the music world.
Yeah, like probably Towns Van Zandt. I don't have any records of Towns Van Zandt.
Yeah.
What's your take on his work?
Yeah, I love Towns. He again a very interesting guy. I believe it or not, I only own one record of his on vinyl, but I love his songs. And again, one of those guys with an untraditional voice. He came out of that Texas, that Austin scene with Gary Clark and Rodney Crowell, and they kind of inspired people like Steve Earle and Lyle Lovett and people like that. Again, Towns had a very tragic life, but
Yeah.
man, the pain and the passion that he put into the songs. I mean, you listen to the song, for the sake of the song, the track,
Yeah.
and then I'll be there and I'll be here in the morning, just incredible. Obviously, Pancho and Lefty, his hit that Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard had a big hit with in the 80s. But yeah, Towns, again, tragically, his life ended when he was just in his 50s, lived a very hard life. He looked much older than 50 something when he died. But again, a huge influence on some of my favorite artists. Again, Steve Earle's son, Justin Towns Earle. If you like that singer-songwriter kind of hard, heavy stuff, listen to Justin Towns Earle, another guy that was taken too soon. His dad is Steve Earle. His whole catalog is just pure. It's so good.
Yeah, this one, Big Star. This is
Yeah. Oh, great tune.
on the album on the cover. He's like sitting on a desk or behind a. That's the very first album. I don't. Is that a self-title?
Yeah, I think so. That's the album that I have. It's got Waiting Around to Die on it, and then Be Here in the Morning. Yeah.
Oh, interesting, Sean. Interesting.
Probably Guy Clark. Probably he started talking about Guy Clark, not Gene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Guy. Obviously, Guy had a longer career, but again, I'm gonna go back to Steve Earle. Steve Earle did several tribute albums to his heroes who died. So he has an album called Towns, where he does just Towns Van Zandt tunes. He has an album called Guy, where he does Guy Clark songs, and he actually did one for his son called JT for Justin Towns, because Towns Van Zandt was Justin Towns Earle's godfather.
Okay, yeah.
So, and obviously his namesake. So those are great records. If you've never heard those, if you like that.
No, I never heard of Guy Clark, and yeah, Big Star mentions I think he yes, as I said, I follow this guy. Big Star is a good friend of mine. He's a friend just like myself. He's been living in Australia for 20 years, and his channel is probably the one I really like.
Yeah.
So loves all different genre of music, and yeah, discovered not a zillion. I will be exaggerating, but
Yeah.
enough records. I could really push aside everything I know and focus on everything I discovered, and yeah, it's a never ending story.
Just to take his channel name, I mean Big Star. I'd never heard of Big Star until YouTube, until I got into this thing.
Yeah,
And those I've got those first two Big Star records, and didn't realize Alex Chilton with Big Star, and how he was in the Box Tops, and I didn't know any of that stuff.
yeah. This is how I started to do the genealogic tree. To try to follow members. Okay, they were part of this band. Okay, they formed right after that side project at the very beginning before the internet days. This is how you could a little bit to trace back.
Yeah, and one thing I always I thought that I would do, and I've realized quickly how hard it is to do, is to reach out and get all of the Birds side project stuff.
Yeah.
It is endless. I mean, Chris Hillman and Roger McGuinn alone have tons of records that they were part of. And then you have, the Clarence White, guys. Clarence White was playing bluegrass before he was in the Birds with his group, the Whites, with his brother. Gene Parsons, who was the later day drummer for the Birds, he had a couple of records that are really good. Yeah, again, Gene Clark. Obviously, you have David Crosby. So it's a tough one to expand upon.
Yeah.
I
Question
don't
for you.
I don't know Willis Allen Ramsey. I don't think I've ever heard of him, but should I? Is the question.
I never heard of him either.
Yeah, yeah, he would have been a great show to see, like in like a small little beer joint. I mean, that's the kind of place you'd want to see him. I don't think you'd want to see him in an auditorium. Okay, I know the big guy that's like taking the world by storm. His name is like MJ Linderman. I think he's out of Asheville, North Carolina. Um, and he's supposed to be like the up and coming thing in like the Americana world. Kind of, hard lyrics, a la, Elliott Smith, Nick Drake, that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And how about the British folk? Uh, I mean, bands like Fairport Convention. Do you know them? Do you like them? Do you?
I have one Richard Thomas record that I think
The-
actually JT gave me.
yeah,
Um,
the one with Linda. I want to see the bright light of the city. Probably.
yep.
Yeah,
Um,
but because I think it's interesting. They were at the very beginning their career. They were nicknamed the British Jefferson Airplane because they
oh,
were covering songs from Emmett Rhodes, Bob Dylan, Johnny Mitchell, and it's really ironic. Their producer, Joe Boyd, the guy who witnessed Dylan electrified the Newport Festival, he got to manage the UFO Club in London and work with Soft Machine with Pink Floyd at their beginnings, and they helped this band. They say, "Hey, you're British people. You have to assume you're British guys, so you don't have to do cover songs of American folk." And yeah, they hired Dave Swarbrick's fiddle player and made this incredible album with Sandy Denny. Sandy Denny,
yeah.
this was like a game changer when she joined the band. They dramatically changed, and it was all the old beginning of the British folk, the new revival of the British folk. And this is an absolutely masterpiece in my book, Legion Leaf,
Okay.
1969. And yeah, Richard Thompson made his project. A guy named Ashley Hutchinson formed a band called Steel Eyed Pan right after that. Uh, Sandy Denny, she made a solo career, passed by way too young. Unfortunately, this is her solo album. she made right after she left the Fairport Convention. And yeah,
She
yeah,
she played. Yeah, she was on Battle of Evermore.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's where people would know her that don't know Fairport.
Yeah, exactly.
About Zeppelin.
Yeah, yeah. She had recorded one album with the Strobes, but never. This one has been released only 6 years later. I think they had some issue with a deal or record company. I don't know. So she recorded album. She joined Fairport Convention, and then the Strobes. Yeah, they find they yeah they yeah, it's weird. They record this album, was released 6 years later. I don't know why. So Sandy joined Fairport Convention, and they were the two singer. Do you know the Strobes a little bit?
I've heard of the Straubs.
Yeah.
Are they power pop or are they
At the beginning on the first album, very like folk, very
okay?
British folk, very acoustic folk. This is the two albums. On the third album, they Rick Wakeman, yes, keyboard player. He joined the band, so they were like progressive folk, prog, and they kind of explore, yeah, remaining a folk band, but with more prog elements.
Okay.
But yeah, the very beginning, very very folk. Yeah,
Now, I would say like my intro to British rock, I mean British folk. I mean, obviously other than the Donovans and people like that, um, was were Lindisfarne,
yeah,
um, with their Fog on the Tyne record. I've heard that one in another record by theirs. I heard it was I was watching one of the BBC shows, and they played a Lindisfarne. They played the song "Meet Me on the Corner," which was their biggest hit,
yeah,
and I absolutely fell in love with that song, and I had to buy that CD. So that's the one British folk piece that I have, I guess, in the collection, other than your typical your Donovans and
yeah.
um, groups like that, artists like that.
I think this one has only been released in the US. This one,
The Hurdy Gurdy Man. Okay.
yeah. It's another interesting album. This is the one he made right after he got back from India. He was with the Beatles in India in '68.
Yep.
He taught John Lennon how the picking technique,
Yep.
how you can hear on the Dear Prudence.
Yep.
And this is a perfect photographic picture of the swinging London '60s. On this one, it has folk element, psych element, jazz element, Indian Oriental music. Really worth a visit. Yeah, this is a reissue I got, but yeah, who cares? And yeah, the album is simply beautiful.
Yeah, I love obviously like the stuff like I mean Colors is a great tune. Catch the Wind is one of my go-to songs that I play on guitar. And yeah, Russell mentioned John Martin. John Martin is a fantastic player as well. Solid Air. That one just got a reissue recently. I need to get it. Um,
Okay.
he wrote that song "May You Never," which Eric Clapton had a hit with like a year or two after the fact. Um, and then "Up on the Hill" is another great tune that John Martin wrote. He was kind of, I don't even know what you would call him. He had like this smoky kind of soulful voice, but fantastic guitar player. He used to write in like crazy guitar tunings. Yeah, Solid Air is supposed to be like a must have for people.
Okay. I will check. I know this name. It rings a bell. You see a lot of those records in the dollar bin sometimes over here. So
Yeah, and he
yeah.
was one of those guys too. Like his voice completely changed. So he also died younger. I mean, he was in his 60s. Unfortunately, he gained just a ton of weight, and that ended up being a factor in his health. And his voice got a lot lower as a result of just years of smoking and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, John Martin is just a fantastic, underappreciated singer here in the States.
And yeah, you were mentioning Eric Clapton. What's your take on Eric Clapton's huge career?
Um, I am not a huge Clapton guy. Obviously, I would say, and I know Glenn Kellaway says this, and it's hard for me to argue with him. You can't find a more, a stronger career for a resume than Eric Clapton in the music world. I mean, he's one of those guys. He'd play in the band, and if he got tired of him, he would leave. Again,
Mm.
he's the only Hall of Famer that's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 3 times. Understandably so. I'm not huge into British blues or and that kind of stuff. I mean, I've got like the John Mayall Blues Breakers record.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I like early Stones and some Yardbirds and stuff like that. But it's not something that I gravitate toward. Um, I much rather would rather listen to um, the Pete Townsends of the world, the Who, and um,
Okay.
in terms of people like in his demographic, Rod Stewart at that time. I'd much rather listen to them than Clapton records.
Early Rod Stewart are pretty cool. The album Every Picture Tells a Story. I think it's he got backed by the Faces. It was still part of the Faces back then. And it's
Yeah. I mean, because
not.
they're still all over that. I mean, Ronnie Wood is all over that record. I think Ian Stewart's on that record.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is. It's a great album. I mean, that title track is just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, the Faces. I really like the late '60s British bands. The Kings and the Small Faces as well.
Yeah,
And in my opinion, they should have been as big as the Who in the '70s.
yeah,
But they had some internal issues. They were about to be joined by Peter Frampton. They were like touring in France for a French artist, and not Ronnie Lane, Steve Marriott.
yeah,
He said the other, hey, we should get in the band Peter Frampton, and so they split at that time. It's really too bad because they were quirky, offbeat, typical the swinging London '60s, as I said, with like real offbeat, and then the '70s, Humble Pie, great
yeah,
one. Live at the Fillmore, one of the greatest live album from the '70s. I mean, and
yeah.
and it's a pity because these artists doing a concert in the '60s we saw with the Beatles, with the small speaker, and it was like not very cool. But
It was the PA. It was the PA system. Yeah,
yeah, but 10 years after, when you see a documentary, when you see McCartney at the table, seeing all the possibilities, we are 10 years after, and it's like, wow. So it was really the good time. So I regret that those bands, yeah, like the Small Faces, could not like going on being as big as the Who in the '70s. But this is my imagination. Yeah, yeah,
well, and that's the same with like you hear a lot of those early. We're talking about the Birds, like those early Birds recordings sound terrible
yeah,
because like they can't hear each other. It's not because they weren't capable; they just couldn't hear each other. And even those Beatles records, I mean, I think they're fun, they're high energy though in terms of like the live stuff that you listen to. But I mean, you see those documentaries all the time where Ringo could not hear a thing, and he had to fully rely on Paul's foot and essentially shaking his hips to
yeah,
know where he was in the track. Yeah, it would have been something had groups like the Beatles and the Birds started in 1968, 69, like the Led Zeppelins and
yeah,
the Who. I mean, the Who obviously were one of those that transcended into the '70s. The Stones
yeah.
obviously are still doing their thing, filling out football stadiums and soccer stadiums. Um, yeah, it would have been interesting if the Beatles had been delayed about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, yeah. I think that would have been interesting. Yeah, to with the better technologies. Yeah, in the '70s. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned McCartney. Just I mean, you see those Wings Over America shows,
that's
in
the
that
one I'm talking
documentary.
about. Yeah, yeah,
It's just like you're like that could have been. I mean, because he's playing, I've Just Seen a Face and Lady Madonna, like Beatles songs, and you're thinking like
yeah.
the Beatles obviously would have done that and would have been like the Stones if they were, they still would be selling out stadiums if they were around.
What's your take on the Stones? Since you are a Beatles fan, just like myself, what's your
I like the Stones. I don't the older I get, the less I mean, I don't think that you should be one or the other, because I don't think the Stones are even close to the Beatles. Just in the fact that they had, high record sales in the '60s. Um, I think, the Stones, they had some ground that they broke, but they weren't always pushing for the next thing. They were, McCartney kind of said it a couple of years ago. The Stones were really a kind of a glorified blues band.
Yeah,
That kind of made it big, and obviously they were listening to yeah, John Lee Hooker and Little Walter and groups like that, and like push those guys, and saying like, these are the songs that we're pulling from. We're doing stuff like, Little Red Rooster and Sticks and Stones and songs like that that we didn't come up with. We're adding our take on it. And even you see those clips of the Stones in the '70s and '80s playing with those blues guys that are in their '70s, still hanging on to that legacy. So I mean, I think comparing the Beatles and the Stones, it's like comparing, I don't know, it's like comparing,
yeah,
Queen
yeah. I
to,
know. I got
I
you.
don't
Yeah,
know, you know,
yeah. It's two different approach. It's yeah. Totally agree. We could compare the Stones with early Pretty Things or blues bands like that, but not with the Beatles. They definitely, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And what's your take on progressive music in general? I'm not specifically prog rock, but progressive. The way hit, the way rock. You know, I like to think 1969 was a pivotal year.
yeah,
Woodstock, the climax. There were some albums they came out like Game Changer, King Crimson and the Core of Crimson King, first Led Zeppelin, Chicago, fusions, jazz, rock with
Jimi
contains a simple
Hendrix,
Jimi Hendrix exactly,
yeah,
and everything won't be the same again, you know. So
right.
and after that, the technology, the musical industry that get more structured. What's your take on on those years after from 71 up until the era of LP, so to say?
Like the classic rock era,
Yep.
yeah. Well,
Yep.
I've talked about it with friends before. I mean, Abbey Road is my favorite Beatles record. It's my second favorite album of all time, and I think the reason that that album is held in such high regard, and what my friends and I have talked about, is that it sounds the most contemporary of any Beatles album. You listen to Abbey Road by the Beatles, it holds up with those first couple Led Zeppelin albums, with Who's Next, with those AC/DC records. It's kind of a classic rock album. I don't you don't look at Hard Day's Night and Help as classic rock albums. Abbey Road is a classic rock album. And so with that, I do agree that '69 was probably the year of the turning point. I mean, it was kind of like you know the end of that innocence, I guess, of like the Summer of Love was '67.
Yep.
Woodstock was closing out the decade. Vietnam was still really strong, and support for that was waning fast. And I do think, yeah, I mean, again, like your King Crimsons and your, um, even like, yeah, I mean, your Led Zeppelins and all that, and even into like the early '70s with, Yes, and Electrolyte Orchestra and like groups like that. Um, those groups would not have existed had you not had the simplicity of those albums like Help or Hard Day's Night, or those early Stones blues records. Um,
Yeah, because it wasn't back then. Doing an album, you did an album when you had enough hit, 45 singles, and it
yeah,
was more a collection of stuffs. When you see the first two Beatles album are not bad, but
yeah,
the UK, not the US was a little different. Please Me and With the Beatles, they were not recording an album like they did on Revolver, or like they did on the like sitting around the table trying to find some common things.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah.
So
I do think it's progressive, and not to turn this into a Beatles conversation, but like I've always said that like the turning point, Beatles album from for a lot of people is Revolver or Rubber Soul, where like it became about the record, but really the turning point for the Beatles, I think, was Hard Day's Night, because I mean, it's all Lennon McCartney tracks, and that was just within a year of releasing Please Please Me, which was mostly covers, like you said, or it was half and half
Half,
covers. And
yeah, half, yeah, yeah,
with the Beatles, same thing. It was kind of like a part two, but just to show, talk about progressive, just
yeah.
that growth that they had in a year between Please Please Me and Hard Day's Night.
Hard as Night, they had enough success, so they could do whatever they want. Like
Yeah,
placing a microphone like 2 inch away from the drums, they could, because they were the Beatles. Okay,
yeah,
they can do that. Revolver was interesting because they stopped touring, so
mhm,
they, it wasn't wouldn't have make sense for Ringo to do some special stuff live, because no one could hear. But they knew, okay, they will stop touring, so they could add more complexity. This is probably also why this album Revolver. My top three Beatles are records are Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper, Revolver. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
and yeah, what I like about Revolver is that it has this complexity. They knew they don't have to play live, because they stopped touring. They
hmm,
decided, okay, we stop touring. And that's one of the real album to me. Yeah, 66, 67. It's hard to say, it's hard to find an album before, as an album, as an ensemble, as a things that works well together, like tied, sewed
yeah.
together. It's hard. It's hard.
It is, and I mean, you
Yeah,
listen to that live stuff from when they were playing in Europe in '66. I mean, to hear the Beatles singing, rock and roll music and Twist and Shout in 1966, they were burnt out. They didn't want to do that anymore.
yeah, exactly. Like Jimi Hendrix didn't want to play Hey Joe in 68.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he would have been on the same track had he lived through the '70s. I mean, he would have probably. I mean, we mentioned Miles Davis at the beginning. I think he would have been kind of down that path of he would have been playing the record that he was working on at that time.
yeah,
I don't think that Jimi Hendrix would, at least, for at least 10 years, 15 years, I don't think he would have gone back to play, Purple Haze and, All on the Watchtower. I think he would have been playing the record that he was working on, or the next record after
yeah.
that.
I had the feeling. I know a big star in the comment is don't like Led Zeppelin, but when the first album Led Zeppelin came out, it was always very pivotal, because it's like psychedelic as we knew was over.
Hmm.
Lots of bands started to do some more hard rock stuff,
Yeah,
having blues influence, but the psychedelics, drug related stuff was in a way was a little bit over. And then at the end of the year, Altamont, definitely
yeah,
was a showstopper, I think.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's I always talk about I Want You as being like the Beatles doing, kind of the Beatles trying to stay up to date with, the Zeppelins, and because Zeppelin had just come out with that first record, and it kind of shows what turned into metal. I mean, heavy metal. I mean, that it was kind of sort of Black Sabbathy, to an extent. Kind of like predates Black Sabbath. That kind of sound, like that deep acid, almost doom rock.
yeah. The heart of the situation. It's maybe it's probably not how do you say hazard in English? It's not by chance that both cities, Birmingham in England and Detroit, produced those bands, because they were hard cities to live, because
Yeah.
the industry. Yeah, I think there is no. I don't have the word in English, but you understand.
Hmm.
There is a logic, that those bands emerge from those places. Black Sabbath, if they had grown up in the South Riviera, UK, they would probably never have produced such a hard sound, very gloomy, probably.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, we still have a lots of people in the comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I like, yeah, like the whole, like, I mean, doom rock is like a whole thing, even still. I mean, it's not my thing at all, but um, yeah, I mean, you listen to that first Black Sabbath record, especially, which I like. I mean, I've got some of those Black Sabbath CDs, and I know I like them, in a
Yeah,
certain.
yeah. I like them as well. Like that, I like the first Judas Priest, for instance, or a certain Doctor Feelgood. Is different. Captain Beefheart, no question about that. But I like even Deep Purple. We call them Deep Purple a hard rock band. It's by far not comparable to Black Sabbath. But I like this early 70s hard rock sound.
Yeah.
And it's crazy now. You have all this footage on YouTube. There were two shows, one in Germany called the Beat Club, and the other the old gray whistle test in the UK.
Hmm.
And it's amazing. Those bands were like almost, they had almost like mainstream exposure, which is now you wouldn't think of those kind of bands like so avant-garde, playing in a first channel British or German television.
Yeah,
Yeah, time was different.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, that's got the backwards loop on it.
yeah. And yeah, the first time I heard the mono version, it's weird because on the French press, the very first French press, they remove the countdown at the beginning of Taxman.
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay.
that loop, that reverb on Only Sleeping is way more present, is way more way more there on the. So yeah, I'm with the mono, definitely. Yeah, the mono version is my go-to. Revolver and Sergeant Pepper, to me is
Well,
the mono.
let me ask you, because this has kind of become a Beatles chat. Are you in for the new box set that's coming out for the mono North American
No,
records?
no, I'm not a completist. I'm not a
Okay.
completist. Beatles, it's a great part of my life. I didn't want to show Beatles record because some people in the chat say no, but I
Yeah.
will show the book I bought when I was 12 years old. This is the very book. Um, I think I was gifted. This is the French version of all the songs. So and back then I was struggling to buy the CDs, and it took me 4 years to buy the CDs. When I got into vinyl, my goal was to have the entire UK catalog, UK press, first editions, and yeah, I managed to do that within 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty done. I'm pretty done. I don't need five different copies. I do have some exceptions. I have 45s. I have a box set of Revolver, but I'm done. I have all this version. I'm okay with. I won't focus my time, my money on everything available on Earth because it's fine. I
Yeah.
managed to have the copies I want to have, and now it's time to to invest my money and my time on something different, something obscure, something like, hey, lots of different stuff needs to get attraction, interest. So
You
this is
s-
how I do things. What's your take on that?
I was gonna say, yeah,
You could you could disagree. No worries.
you say that
Yeah,
until they announce, the Rubber Soul box set, and then it's like, oh well, I've got to get that too.
yeah,
But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I am a completist. So like, I just got this recently. This is Long After Dark by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's the fifth album, right? One, two, three, four. Yeah, fifth album. Um, it has the big hit "You Got Lucky" on it. This was like the, kind of a foil cover to it. This was like a special edition from the website. It's the fancy number at the bottom there, and but it's like, again, this is not an expensive record to go out and find in stores. It's not even considered one of Tom Petty's best, but it's got a set of bonus tracks, and it's remastered. It was essentially the 42nd 42nd anniversary of it. So whenever there's Tom Petty stuff released, whenever there's Bob Dylan stuff released, I'm gonna buy it. Beatles are different because the Beatles or they're kind of like Kiss. They have so much stuff, like, I mean, in terms of just like the marketing that there's fan clubs put into the Beatles in the 60s. I mean, Kiss was designed to be a brand. The Beatles weren't designed to be that, but the Beatles kind of became one without them wanting to
yeah.
be. But So with that, like I don't have again, like I have the Beatles stuff on CD. I've got all the new box sets, the Giles Martin box sets on CD. I don't need to go out and search for all the originals and the US versions and the all that. Like I don't need that. I just need the Beatles songs on physical format, and that's all I need.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly the same.
because
You
like
know,
you said, I first got into them. I listened to the 2009 Beatles stuff because
yeah,
I was a freshman in high school. It was my first year of high school.
yeah.
Um, so that's where I got into. Got into,
This is how I discover 90. EMI Millionaire. This is a year
yeah,
2000. This is the CD I bought, and I don't need 50 different versions. I know they
I
are all
don't.
different and all maybe interesting to a certain extent, but
Yeah, yeah. The only again with that mono set that's coming out for the Beatles. I know Target is releasing Meet the Beatles on like blue vinyl, and that would be kind of cool to have because that was the album that broke the Beatles into the United States and North America.
yeah,
And it's got like it's the cool blue kind of cover versus just the straight ahead black and white of with the Beatles. So
yeah.
like that would be cool to have. It's in mono. I think that would be pretty nice to have. Um, but
If
other
I
than that, I don't know.
if I've had if I get a chance, if I have a friend in the States and he has this collection, the US, yeah, and then I will sit and listen and take the opportunity to compare, to enjoy the music. But it's not like I need to own every single pressing. I probably have a Japanese press of the second album. Japanese is interesting as well because they did the British catalog and the US catalog as well, but it's a later issue from the 70s. But now I'm more focused on discovering yeah, new stuff I knew nothing about. So
Right. Right, and that's the thing with like these box sets is I want them because it's new stuff like that Bob Dylan box I showed at the beginning. That's all pretty much unreleased stuff.
yeah,
Um, and the Tom Petty set is remastered, and it's never been remastered other than I think the one time it was put on CD. Um, and it's got the new tracks on it. So like that's why I'm going after those things. And then if there's an album that I don't own, for example, like I would buy that as a reissue for the first time. But again, there's Beatles albums on the US. I wasn't born during that time where like people were. That's how they knew the Beatles here in North America with those track listings. I knew the Beatles through their original UK track
yeah,
list, just like you.
me as
So
well. Yeah, yeah.
we weren't around to watch Ed Sullivan.
No, no, no. I was born way 20 years after that. And
Yeah,
yeah, and I remember when I was 11, in the French channel, the fourth channel in Canal Plus, they aired the documentary that was to become the anthology. They aired the entire documentary.
yeah,
two Sundays, and it was like wow. And after that, I bought it on VHS and on DVD after that, and yeah, it's a big part of my life or my. But it changed, to respond also to the previous question. When I started the channel, I realized, okay, there are enough channels. They talk about the Beatles, and when I really like Parallelogram Auction, he's fantastic. This guy who lives in Austria, and they had the great channels who talks about the Beatles. But let's put something different to the table. When I go to the record show, when I discover obscure bands here in Montreal. Y- I think back in the days, they were these bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. They benefited from massive exposure, and other bands were obscure because no one put some light on that one.
right.
And this was all because of the corporate, of the TV, of the marketing. And now, if we, with the benefit of the hindsight, if those bands remains obscure, is because of us. We are to be
Mhm.
blamed. You know what I mean? Because
Right,
now with our channel we know the Beatles, we know Pink Floyd, and it's fine, it's part of our culture as well. But let's put some spotlight on other things. They deserve more exposure. This is our mission. Probably, I
right.
don't know.
Well, it is, especially with you and I, with our age group. I mean, we're in the same generation, I would say.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, like again, like my channel really from the get go, I've talked about artists that I love, and wasn't concerned about the views that I was going to get. I mean, like when I was still living at my parents' house when I started my channel, I was talking like I was like in their dark basement making videos. They're really weird. My early videos are not good. But I was talking about the Avett brothers even then, and John Prine, and got 15 or 20 views. I was also trying to grow my channel at the same time. But even still, I mean, like I'll do an artist spotlight on a band that I know nobody is searching for. But like the one person that's reaches out to me and says, "Hey, because of this, I
Yeah,
bought a concert ticket, or I bought
yeah,
a record for them, or streamed the whole album on Spotify, like whatever it is. If I got you into music, that's fantastic, and like that's part of why I changed my channel name. I mean, I'm not not sure I'm gonna stick with it right now, because again I talk about more than Americana. But yeah, like those those artists, those the John Prines and the the band, and groups like that. Like I just I can't get enough of that introspective kind of stuff, and that's the stuff that people don't talk about. I love the Beatles like you do. I love.
yeah.
I mean, I even as much as I love Bob Dylan, I don't talk about Bob Dylan that much. I don't spotlight Bob Dylan that much because there are so many other channels that do it
Yeah.
3 times better than I do.
And I could do 4 videos about the Beatles. Believe it, I have enough material. I read that incredible book they wrote. They came out in 2000, and I
Mm,
know much. But this is not something I want to bring to the table. And as you said, I once made a video, got no views, and one
yeah,
year after, a guy say, "Hey, thanks to you, I was talking about an obscure hard rock band from France, and he find this album and enjoyed." So I say, "Okay, well done." So this is what matters at the end of the day.
yeah. It
Yeah,
is. I mean, we were talking about John Prine earlier. I mean, I'm thrilled that you picked up a John Prine record because of something I said. And there's
yeah,
another channel you might follow him because he's a Beatles guy, Tom Hunyadi, who he has a podcast called Two Legs, where it's a Paul McCartney podcast, um, and he got into the Avett Brothers because of stuff that I said, and I think that's just like, oh, that's so refreshing to know.
okay. Uh, time to hit the button, or you say 2 hours? We are over 2 hours now.
Yeah, I'm probably needing to head off here. But I mean, it's been great discussion. I mean, obviously, we
Yeah,
kind of ran the gamut. There's a lot more to talk about. I mean, I
yeah.
could talk
Don't
about music all the time.
Yeah, me too. Don't hesitate to join me. I will try to organize maybe a second live stream with more people.
Yeah,
I would love to bring someone from Germany who loves very much Americana folk as well. And it's
yeah,
always nice to bring people finding sort of common ground. This is what I like to do on my streams. We are here to exchange and
yeah, for sure. And I love, because again, you're somebody new-ish, to talk about. I mean, obviously, we've talked, off camera and through comments, but to get your perspective on it is always nice. Because I mean, I love the guys that I'm with a lot. But we've kind of beat some of this conversation into the ground. But so
yeah.
like I like to get another voice, another. I mean, the people in your panel here. A
And
lot
it's
of them.
my opinion. It's not the best. When I say I don't
Right,
do
right.
this, it's my perspective. Because of I have a certain amount of money, budget, time dedicated. So you
Right.
know, yeah. So, but we are
Yeah.
here to.
Yeah. I'm always. If I'm whenever I'm available again, I'd love to do it again.
Okay, cool. So hey, thank you everyone in the chat. See lots of French people are on fire, commenting. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Thank you for your time. Uh, Replay available. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for next chapter. Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.